what is going on in the mind of Russian analysts close to Vladimir Putin? How do they realize, how do they understand the situation with the Trump administration? Because we know if something happens to Vladimir Putin, we're going to have a nuclear war. There is no way out. Whoever going to replace him, he's going to bring a nuclear war. He's going to attack London. He's going to attack all these decision makers in Europe. What is your take on that? And how far they want to go?
Well, I mean, this is one of the fundamental discussions. This is why I go to Russia, just so everybody understands, so I can have these conversations and talk to people. I just finished doing a very lengthy interview with Sergei Karaganov. He's a prominent Russian political scientist. He's a man who's very anti Russian interaction with the West. He believes that Russia should pivot to the East and work with China, that there's no future for Russia in the West because the West is an untrustworthy negotiating partner. He's 100% correct. But here's the thing. He believes that the West is bluffing. I mean, he's a prominent believer. He doesn't believe in nuclear disarmament. This is where he and I have clashed in the past because I'm an advocate, or at least I have been. I don't know where I stand today. I'm an advocate for meaningful disarmament. But from the Russian perspective, how could you possibly get involved in meaningful disarmament with an American negotiating partner who's untrustworthy? Because the key to disarmament is the mutual benefit of the pact and the binding nature of the pact. And the United States just can't be trusted at all. And so rather than limit your nuclear force, I mean, if anything, the behavior of the United States promotes the notion of Russia enhancing its nuclear deterrent, expanding its nuclear capabilities. Not the direction I want to go, but I understand it. But Karaganov believes that the United States is bluffing, that the United States will never use nuclear weapons to defend Europe, and that if Europe continues to pose an existential threat to Russia, that Russia should use nuclear weapons against Europe. And he wrote a piece a couple years ago where he said the United States is not willing to trade Boston for Poznan, meaning that Russia can drop a nuke on Poznan and the United States will do nothing. That's a hell of a statement, a hell of a gamble. This is a man who has sat next to Vladimir Putin. This is a man who participates in the Valdai Club. And people listen to this and they say, oh, that's the hardliners advising Vladimir Putin. But I think that we need to understand that Sergei Karaganov is not the government, that the Russian government is actually acting as if they believe that the United States would use nuclear weapons to defend Europe, and that Russia is vulnerable to American nuclear weapons attack. And there's a huge hesitancy inside Russia, a weakness that's being exploited successfully by the United States and Europe. I mean, Russia keeps publishing red lines that keep getting crossed, and people like myself and others assess and say, well, that's because Vladimir Putin is very pragmatic and that ultimately he's going to do what needs to be done to get the job done, come hell or high water. And if Europe pushes him, then, he could use nuclear weapons. But I think this is up to debate right now. I mean, I haven't made a conclusion. I'm not sitting here calling Vladimir Putin, a flake. I personally believe that he's not. But I do believe that he's being advised by people anybody who believes in the spirit of Alaska today should be fired. There is no spirit of Alaska. That is the spirit of submission, the spirit of surrender. And now the Russians need to, reflect on the reality of this rogue nation, the United States, and how do you contain this rogue nation? You don't contain it through friendship. You don't contain it through diplomacy. You contain it through strength. That's the only thing the United States understands is strength. It will act where it senses weakness. And right now, the fact that the United States boarded a Russian flag tanker in an act of piracy means they sense weakness on the part of Russia. And they will continue to push as long as they perceive weakness. Russia, at some point in time, needs to have a demonstration of strength. And sadly, this probably means some sort of military conflict with the United States, hopefully contained. But again, you committed an act of piracy against a Russian ship. The penalty for pirates is usually being sunk. I'm not promoting that. I'm an American. I don't want any harm to come to Americans. But my God, the Coast Guard just committed an act of piracy. It's time for Russia to draw a line and say, no more. You've gone as far as you're going to go. From here on in, if you take an action, there will be a Russian military response, and we're willing to take it as far as you want to go. I mean, if you'd like me, I can put my entire strategic nuclear force on, combat alert, if you want to play that game. Right now, the United States believes that Russia will never do this, that Russia has no intention of doing this. Russia can't do it. And so the United States is going to push and push and push. And you have insane people like Pete Hegseth, who just thinks that, my God, because we put 200 JSOC personnel into Caracas, we can do anything. Now we put some JSOC people on board a Russian tanker. We can do anything. And you have people like Scott Besson who actually believe that we can sanction Russia into collapse. And that's what he is doing. Trump has not embraced a policy of lifting sanctions on Russia. Trump has embraced a policy of sanctioning Russia into collapse. That is the policy of the Trump administration. Russia needs to wake up to this, and that is in fact the policy. We aren't looking for a way out of Ukraine. We're looking to defeat Russia strategically in Ukraine, and we're doing that by dragging this conflict out. And blaming this on Putin, saying the sanctions can't be lifted because of this in hopes of generating a fifth column inside Russia for that purpose. What does Vladimir Putin have to think about today? Let's look back on this now. The drone attack against Russian strategic nuclear bombers was an attack that was carried out by the Central Intelligence Agency together with MI6. The CIA has been working with Ukrainian intelligence since 2015 to develop resources inside Russia for these very kinds of attack. To carry out an attack like this, it requires, the ability to identify facilities of interest, to be able to rent them, operate them under the radar, to acquire vehicles. Look, it's called advanced force operations. You're in Iran right now. You do know what we did in Iran before the failed hostage rescue attempt. We sent in a special operations team covertly. Dick Meadows led it. They rented warehouses. They rented trucks. They rented safe houses. And they drove these trucks around. They did reconnaissance. And basically, Delta Force was supposed to take helicopters, land outside of Tehran. The trucks were to meet Delta Force, and the Delta Force would be trucked in on Iranian trucks to the embassy, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they would launch their assault. And then the helicopters would come in, lift them out, take them to an airfield, they'd be seized by the Rangers, etc. But we had people on the ground in Iran doing this. Fred, I can't remember, Arouge, I think his last name was, he was an Air Force junior enlisted man at the time, Iranian, Persian speaker. He was with them as a linguist. He got left behind. I mean, when the thing went bad, he got left behind. And Fred had to make his way out on his own. He made it to Turkey, but, if he got caught, death. I later met Fred. Fred became a helicopter pilot for Task Force 160 for the U.S. Army Special Operations Forces, and he flew missions with me in Iraq as a weapons inspector. But the point is, this is what we do. This is how we operate. The CIA and the British understand, again, the decade of 1990s, we bought everybody, especially the British. The British went out and bought everybody, and they put them on the payroll. And there is a significant system in place in Russia today that the CIA controls. These are safe houses. These are the ability to generate income if necessary under the radar. So you don't have infusions of capital that can be traced. You have people working, earning money, banking that money. So it's there in the system. So when you rent a warehouse, you're not receiving $10,000 from outside that's then used to rent away and raising a red flag. You're just another business person renting a warehouse. And that's what they did. And then they built a drone production factory. And next thing you know, they launched this attack against Russian strategic. This was a test of Russia, because Russia had published, a strategic nuclear doctrine that said if you attack our nuclear infrastructure, we're going to huff and puff and blow your house down. And Russia did jack shit. Russia went, oh, okay, we're going to shrug it off as a non-event. It was a test. Now, apparently, Donald Trump calls up Vladimir Putin, gets a phone conversation with him, and then says, hey, hang on, I'll call you back. and then authorizes a drone attack that could only have taken place with the CIA and support. And at the same time, just so you understand, we were hoping something would happen, because the CIA had already worked with the New York Times and Wall Street Journal weeks in advance to prepare a story published that day. Guys, you do understand that didn't happen by accident. The New York Times published a piece that was based upon the CIA giving away deep, dark secrets about how they operate and what they're doing in Ukraine. And they published it the same day because it was supposed to be the CIA's plan, got Putin or scared Putin or make Putin run, but it's something that's been going on a long time. Instead, they had to modify, saying, but we've been doing this. Vladimir Putin was targeted by Donald Trump. There's no other way to spin this. No other way to spin this. Donald Trump targeted Vladimir Putin. Maybe not with the intent to kill, because, Trump's like, well, we didn't target his residence, just a facility nearby. So what signal were you trying to send, Donald, to strike a facility nearby? That I can get you anytime I want to, and therefore you need to piss your pants every time America says jump. You need to say how high, Mr. President. Caligula, what do you want me to do? That was the signal he's trying to send to Putin. Now, apparently the Russians were smarter and they caught him out. And the Russians know. This is the thing. The Russians turned over a chip to the defense attachés that has data on it that proves that they were targeting Vladimir Putin, and it proves who was providing the intelligence. I mean, I could spend a long time telling you how this gets reverse engineered. The Russians handed over an intact chip, and they just said, we'd like you to take a look at it. But what the Russians are really saying is, we know everything. We know everything. We know what you did. All right, so now they sent that signal, but unless that's backed up with something, it's meaningless, because Trump's, this cult of personality is surrounded by nothing but yes men. Ha ha ha, Mr. President, we almost got him. Good job, Mr. President. You sure showed him a thing or two. The CIA's patting itself on the back, headset saying, see how strong we are. Rubio's like, yeah, I'm not afraid of Russia, and all this stuff. You have to respect Vladimir Putin because he is a sober leader, a sober-minded leader, a pragmatic leader, but he's dealing with a madman, a literal madman, who right now there are no checks and balances to the actions of this madman. Again, I'm not here to advise the president of Russia, but I am here to tell him as an expert analyst, you're being played like a fool by the president of the United States. I hope you understand that. You accept it and you take appropriate actions. But if you believe for a second that there's the spirit of Alaska, if you believe for a second that this is just the bad influences on Trump, that Steve Witkoff can appeal to the better side, Witkoff is part of the problem. He's not part of the solution. Witkoff is empowering a fifth column inside Russia that's designed to take you down, Mr. President. You've been warned.
Scott, you've been to Russia. How did you find the differences in this part of society You've just mentioned a little bit of what's going on in Russia and Witkov, the role of Witkov and his team to somehow make differences within the society. But how influential that could be for a Russian president? I'm talking about internally, inside Russia.
How could this be weaponized against Putin?
Yeah, exactly. How is that possible to weaponize that against Vladimir Putin? Because we know the system.
Let's say you're the governor of Novosibirsk Oblast region, your most powerful economic engine in Russia, and this opportunity that Witkov is dangling out there, that Dmitriev is dangling out there, has the potential of giving you the ability to control contracts, control development. And suddenly you're looking at your future going, man, Vladimir Putin is, 70 some odd years old. I'm 40s. I could be the next president of Russia. I could become the economic engine of Russia. I could be the guy that Putin turns to, and I could be the next president. And so I'm all excited about this. And now you've planted that thought in his head that he's relevant, that he's somebody, and begins talking to people, other people, including the FSB, the local FSB. They use them then to silence opposition, which they're doing right now. And it's not just Novosibirsk, but it's others. The second you start talking about the development of Russian resources, the governors, the local government of the regions that have those resources have a vested interest in this possibility, because a lot of that potential is dormant right now because Russia lacks the capacity to act on its development. If you're running the economy and you're saying, gosh, if we continue this war, we're going to have to transition to a war economy at some point in time. And that's going to impact markets that I've been making money off of, that all my friends are making money off of. It's going to require a tightening of the belt that's going to cause me to be diminished, because right now I have a lot of influence because I'm the money person. I can make money happen. And suddenly I'm not anymore. All these people now start talking to each other. And, what happens is that, Vladimir Putin starts finding out that there's a shadow government. There's people conspiring behind his back, that maybe instructions he's given aren't being carried out to the full effect. Maybe the military starts questioning, his guidance, his leadership. This isn't happening now. I don't believe. I think Vladimir Putin still, has tremendous support. But this is what could happen. This is what the CIA is trying to make happen. It's been what the CIA has been trying to do ever since Vladimir Putin came into office. And they were successful with Navalny, Nemtsov. All these people were all CIA assets, bought and paid for. But the Russians, through their foreign agent law, was able to shut down vectors of control, non-governmental organizations. So the only thing that's left in Russia today are these long-term assets that have been, that were bought back in the 90s by the CIA and MI6 that can be activated as necessary. But now you've created new potential, because if you're, just think about it, you're Kirill Dmitriev, and Vladimir Putin has tapped you now to be the guy interfacing with Witkov. So you have a meeting, you meet in the Kremlin. Putin's like, yeah, this is good. So Dmitriev now meets with Russians and says, the spirit of Alaska is real. Let's talk about so next time Dmitriev comes in, we have a plan of action for the Arctic that we can put on the table to lure America in. And so now he goes up to the Arctic and gets all these people to plan. And once you start planning, it's like anything. You start planning a vacation, you start seeing the vacation in your mind. I'm already on the beach in Hawaii. I'm already playing golf. I'm already, and then suddenly be told, no, you're not going on vacation. It's like a big disappointment. I want to go on vacation. I planned the vacation. I'm spending that money as we speak. And that's what's happening. He creates these commissions, these planning groups that start planning the future of Russia. I mean, the whole stupid tunnel thing. There's not going to be a tunnel. It's never going to happen. But Dmitryev's like, oh, we're going to have this Siberian-Alaskan tunnel. No, you're not. And if you ever did, it's not to bring American wealth into Russia. It's to suck Russian resources out of Russia, because that's the only thing the United States understands. We don't care about Russia. We don't care about Russia. We don't care about Russia. We don't care about Russian companies. We don't care about the Russian bottom line. We don't care about anything about Russia. All we want is Russian resources coming to America on terms that are acceptable to us. That's what it's all about. That's what the spirit of Alaska is. But even then it's a lie, because that implies that we want some sort of legitimate economic interaction between the United States and Russia. We don't. We want to use the promise of legitimate economic interaction to create a fifth column to achieve our ultimate objective. And again, I'm just saying this as loud as I can. The United States has been seeking to remove Vladimir Putin from office since the moment Vladimir Putin became president. It's a 25-year process in place. Come on, guys. Joe Biden went to Moscow in March of 2011 and told the Russian people, the opposition, straight up, it's not a good idea for Vladimir Putin to come back and be president of the United States. That's not a good idea. It's not good for Putin. It's not good for Russia. Could you imagine Dmitry Medvedev coming to the United States, and having a meeting in New York City with a bunch of bankers and stuff? Hey, it's not a good idea for J.D. Vance to run for president. Not a good idea. Not good for J.D. And not good for America. We think that the person that should be the person we pick. Our person. Americans would go, are you high? Get out of here. But Joe Biden did it in broad daylight because that's what we were doing. We were undermining Russia. We've been undermining him forever. We don't like Vladimir Putin. We don't want to work with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin represents everything that we hate. You see, we were happy in the 1990s when Russia was on its knees crawling to us for crumbs. Oh, that made us so happy. And then Vladimir Putin taught Russia to stand up. We're like, whoa, what are you doing? Russia's not allowed to stand up. We won the Cold War. Get back down on your knees, Russia. Behave, heal. And Russia went, no, we're going to stand up. And then Putin taught them to love themselves, because there was a period of time in the 90s where Russia stopped loving itself. Russia went, oh, we're so bad. We're so inferior. We have to do what the West tells us to do. We have to be like the West. We want to be like the West. We want all the West stuff. Make us like the West. Please, we'll do anything to be like the West. But now Putin went, hey, Russia's one of the great civilizations. Why don't you start being proud of being Russian? And the Russians looked around and went, yeah, we're pretty cool. And today the Russians are standing on their 2 feet, fully exercised, very proud of who they are. And we don't want this. We don't want to deal with Russia that is Russia. We want Russia to be defeated, supine, compliant, weak. We can't handle a Russia that stands on its own 2 feet and says we're proud of who we are, because the biggest threat Russia poses now is the fact that they don't want to be like us, because that's how we control the world. That's how American hegemony works. We convince the relevant societies that you're inferior, that the only way that you can get a seat at the table is to be like us. We did it in Iran. We're doing it in Iran. Come on, guys. All those fancy Western stores. Come on, Iranian women, because we know who runs Iran. It's the women, just like they run everything in the world. And you can get that nice dress, and you can wear this nice makeup at home, and you can do this, that, and the other thing. We can take you to London so you can go shopping and all that stuff. Just tell your husband, hey, those Ayatollahs, they got to go. And then the wife whispers in your, honey, the Ayatollah's got to go. And then you get demonstration in the streets. That's a simplistic, comedic thing, but that's how it works. We play to the base desires of people. And instead of Iranian women waking up every morning going, I'm proud of being Iranian. I'm proud of my religion. I'm proud of my culture. I stand on my own 2 feet as a proud representative of Iranian society. See, that's what the West doesn't want. We want Iranian women going, I want to be like those ladies in London. I want to be like those ladies in Paris. I want to go to New York because Iran sucks. No, same thing in Russia. We don't want the Russians looking around going, I'm proud of Russia. I'm proud of being a Russian. I think Russia's great. We want Russians to go, oh, Russia sucks. We want to be like the West. we need American help. We need America to send in their advisors like they did in the 1990s so that our society collapses. And, this is the goal and objective of the United States government. It's not just what Trump wants. Trump just happens to have a bunch of maniacs in power now who believe they can actually follow through on this. But it's been what the United States has wanted for 25 years. And Vladimir Putin has to wake up to this reality. Look, I have to wake up to this reality. I'm the guy that just spent the last 2.5 years traveling to Russia promoting U.S.-Russian friendship. What a load of shit I was selling. America wants to be your friend. No, we don't, apparently. And as long as the American public is infected by Russophobia, you can't trust the American people. There's individuals like myself and others who believe in this, but we're informed individuals. But until you break through the Russophobic hold on how Americans receive their information through academia, through the mainstream media, through government propaganda, the American people are infected. I mean, the stupidity I read in your chat and every other chat, I don't blame just you. The stupidity of the people in here who know nothing of Russia but act as if they do because they read a tweet by by Steve Witkoff or something. They're dumber than shit. To know Russia, you have to go to Russia. If you haven't been to Russia, if you haven't, dived into that, you don't know shit about Russia. So stop pretending you do. But this is the problem. America is controlled by ignorant people. It's sustained by the minds of ignorant people who think they know something and they know nothing whatsoever. And as long as this system exists, why should Russia be friends with us? I mean, Russia should always hold the door open and say, if you want to accept Russia on Russian terms, Russia will be your friend. But I think the day of Russia waiting for the West to come on over is over. Shut the damn door. Make us knock. Don't hold the door open for us. Shut the door. Seal yourselves off. We're your enemy. And most people are trying to destroy you. They act, in regards to Russia, not out of, a desire for friendship, but desire to use friendship as a means of leveraging poisonous systems inside your society to bring it down. That's a sad statement, but it's the truth under the Trump administration. Whether we can change that, I don't know. But I'm very depressed right now because I just spent a lot of time traveling to Russia promoting the concept of U.S.-Russian relations. And I'm an honest person. I honestly believed in that. I believed in that when I was there in November, although it was becoming harder and harder to do that. But today, after what my government has done, at the way the American people are responding to the actions of my government, America doesn't want to be friends with Russia. We don't know how to be friends with Russia. All we want to do is destroy Russia. And Russia needs to understand that and wake up to that reality.